Assalamu alaikum. Ji. So in the last lectures we have completed addition polymers and we have done past paper questions as well. Now today we are going to start condensation polymers because I already told you in the last lectures that there are two different types of polymers: addition polymers and condensation polymers. So addition polymers are those which are formed through addition reactions from alkenes. Their monomers are alkenes. And now we are going to start condensation polymerization. All right, so condensation polymerization, or what are condensation polymers? So basically condensation polymers are those which are formed through condensation reactions. So in simple way we can define them as those polymers which are formed through condensation reactions. Right, so those polymers which are formed through condensation reactions, those are called condensation polymers. An example of condensation reactions, you have studied esterification. Esterification is another example of condensation reaction. So we can define condensation reactions as, like, what are condensation reactions if you want to define condensation reactions. So condensation reactions are basically a reaction in which two molecules combine to form a larger molecule. Two molecules combine to form a larger molecule, producing a small molecule, such as water as a byproduct. Right, so this is what condensation reactions are: a reaction in which two molecules combine to form a larger molecule, producing a small molecule such as water as a byproduct. For example, we have discussed esterification. Esterification is another type of condensation reaction. So in esterification, we reacted carboxylic acids with alcohol in the presence of concentrated sulfuric acid, and we get a larger molecule that was ester and water molecule. So esterification is another example of condensation reaction. So condensation polymers are those polymers which are formed through condensation reactions, right? And in condensation the polymers which are formed through condensation polymerization, we can further classify them into two types. There are two types of condensation polymers. So there are two types of condensation polymers. Right, there are two types of condensation polymers. Number one is natural condensation polymers, those polymers which we get naturally. And number two are synthetic condensation polymers, which are man-made, right, which we made in the industry. So condensation, there are two different types of condensation polymers: natural condensation polymers and synthetic condensation polymers. So in natural condensation polymers, we will discuss the structure of protein and complex carbohydrates. Right, so these are the two examples of natural polymers which we will discuss. Their structure will be discussed. And in synthetic polymers, we will discuss nylon and terylene. Right, so there are two different types of condensation polymers: natural and synthetic condensation polymers. So first, let's just start with the structure of nylon, the synthetic polymer, synthetic condensation polymer, right? So nylon is basically a condensation polymer. Now, first of all, what you have to learn is that condensation polymers. Now, first of all, you must know the monomers of the condensation polymer which we are going to draw, right? So if you're going to draw the structure of nylon, first you have to identify the monomers from which nylon will form. Like in addition polymers, we have seen that all the monomers were of same type, but in condensation polymers, we could have two different types of monomers. So those polymers which are formed from two different types of monomers, they are known as copolymers, right? So nylon, we can simply say that nylon is a copolymer because it has two different types of monomers from which it will form. So the monomers of nylon are dioic acid and diamine, right? So we have two different monomers from which nylon would be formed, dioic acid and diamine. Now, what is meant by dioic acid? Dioic acid means an organic compound which has two carboxylic acid groups, present. Carboxylic acid is represented by C double bond O OH. So any structure which has two of these carboxylic acid groups, it would be known as dioic acid. So the number of carbon atoms does not matter here. Like you can have propane dioic acid. Let's just draw a few examples of dioic acid. Let's suppose 1, 2, 3. So this is one acidic group, this is another acidic group. So we can call it propane dioic acid because we have 1, 2, 3, three carbon atoms in the chain. So it is propane dioic acid. You can have butane dioic acid, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can have hexane dioic acid or heptane dioic acid, right? But while drawing the structure of nylon, the number of carbon atoms does not matter, and that's why we have written dioic acid, right? So it could be 4 or 5 or 6. Normally it is a dioic acid with 6 carbon atoms, but no one will ask you about this thing, so you just simply memorize dioic acid. And the other monomer which we need is a diamine. Now amines, they are not part of the syllabus, but here you just have to memorize what amines are. Amines are basically those organic compounds which contain NH2 group, right? So a diamine means which has two amine groups. So let's suppose if we have CH2, CH2, NH2, and on this side we have an NH2. So this is ethane, because we have two carbon atoms, ethane 1, 2, diamine. So this is just an example. You don't have to memorize the name. Just understand this thing that amines are those organic compounds which contain this functional group NH2. And because this particular compound has two amine groups, that's why we are calling it a diamine. So to make nylon, we need a diamine, right? A dioic acid and a diamine. And number of carbon atoms does not matter. So that's why we are not writing the number of carbon atoms, right? So to draw the structure of nylon, what you have to do, you just simply draw a box, and on both sides we draw C double bond OH and C double bond OH. So this structure represents a dioic acid. This is a dioic acid where the box represent chain of carbon atoms. And because it does not matter that how many carbon atoms we have, so that's why we have just symbolized it with a box, right? And the other monomer is diamine. So we would draw another box which would represent the carbon atoms of diamine, and on both sides we have NH2 group attached, right? And let's just fill this box. So just to make sure that we know that the box which has, so this represent a diamine. Right, so when a dioic acid reacts with diamine under suitable conditions, we get the nylon, right? So now let's just draw the structure of nylon. Let's suppose if we have large number of dioic acids and diamines. So let's just draw first a dioic acid, C double bond O, OH, C double bond O, OH. Then we have diamine. So diamine would be a box, filled box with NH2 group on both sides. Right, so we have drawn a diamine and a dioic acid. Let's draw another dioic acid, C double bond O, OH, and C double bond O, OH, and another diamine, NH2, NH2. And we have large number of these dioic acids and diamines. Now what happens here is that under suitable conditions, these dioic and diamines will react with each other and a small molecule would be lost. Condensation reaction would happen. So let's suppose from dioic acid, this OH group would be lost, and from diamine, H would be lost. On the other side of the diamine, again H would be lost and an OH would be lost. So another water molecule, H and OH, will combine to form water molecule. And then another OH, another H, and this H, and this OH. So how many water molecules are now lost here? If you count the water molecules, how many water molecules are lost here? So this is 1, this is 2, 3, and H here and OH here. This makes another water molecule 4, and this chain goes on and on. So that means the total number of water molecules would be equal to the total number of monomers drawn. We have drawn 4 monomers, dioic acid, then a diamine, then again a dioic acid, again a diamine. So 4 water molecules are lost. So that means 4H2O, right? And now let's draw the structure. Once the water molecule is lost, the remaining part or the residue of both the dioic acid and diamine will combine with each other through covalent bonds, and we get the structure. What we get here is, so this OH is lost and we are left with C double bond O and box, and then again C double bond O, and then this OH is lost, this H is lost. So this carbon atom would make a bond with this nitrogen, right? This carbon atom would make a bond with this nitrogen because the H is lost. So C double bond O will combine with this nitrogen. So we have NH and again a box, and then NH, and then again this water molecule is lost and this nitrogen will connect it to the carbon. So we get C double bond O, C double bond O. Again this water molecule is lost, carbon would be connected to this nitrogen. So NH and NH, right? So now this is the structure of nylon. 4 water molecules are lost and we get the structure of nylon, in which we have dioic acid and diamine. So this is known as nylon. This structure is known as nylon. Now the most important thing you have to learn here is that how to find out the repeating unit of this polymer. How to find the repeating unit. So let's say if I start from this side, C double bond O, right? So I have to just look for this C double bond O again. That where do I get this C double bond O again? So here is this C double bond O. So before that my repeat would end, right? So a C double one residue of dioic acid and one residue of diamine. This would make one repeat. So if you look closely at this structure, this is a repeating unit and this is the same copy of this repeating unit. So we have drawn 2 repeats, right? So this is a repeating unit, right? This is a repeating unit, And next most important thing you have to understand here is that um this dioic acid and diamine, they are linked, they get connected on this side, like this carbon of the C double bond O, it makes a bond with the nitrogen atom, right? So this carbon gets connected to the nitrogen and chain length increases. So basically we call it linkage. From where the dioic acid and diamine combines to each other, we call it linkage. So this is the linkage, C double bond O NH. Again, you can see that here we have again this linkage, C double bond O NH, then again C double bond O NH. So basically this is called the linkage in the nylon structure. So they'll ask you about the linkage, what is the linkage here? So you can just simply draw the structure of the linkage, that C double bond O from the dioic acid get linked to the NH of diamine. So this linkage is known as amide linkage. This is known as amide linkage, and that's why nylon is also known as polyamide, because it contains large number of these amide linkages. So we can also call nylon is basically a type of polyamide. Any addition polymer, any condensation polymer which has large number of amide linkages is called a polyamide. So this is the structure of nylon, and we have identified the repeating unit and the linkage as well. Right, so I hope everyone now got the idea that how to draw the structure of nylon. Now let's just discuss few of the properties of nylon. So basically nylon is a synthetic fiber, right? It is a synthetic fiber, a man-made fiber. Is a type of polyamide, and some important characteristics of nylon is that it is strong and light, right? So it is strong and light, stretchable without breaking, and it is made up of two different monomers. So it is a copolymer. We already have discussed this thing, but just to make sure that you remember it, it is a copolymer. That means made of two different monomers, right? So it is a copolymer, and also known as polyamide because it contains large number of amide linkages, right? So this is the structure of nylon. A dioic acid get linked to diamine, and we get this sort of structure which is known as polyamide, or you can call it nylon, right? So another example of a condensation polymer is terylene. So another example which we are going to discuss here is terylene. This is another synthetic condensation polymer. This is also known as polyester. Right, so again, first we have to draw the structure of the monomers from which terylene is formed. So in case of terylene, we have a dioic acid, again a dioic acid. So one of the monomer is similar in both nylon and terylene, right? So this is terylene, this is one of the monomer of terylene, a dioic acid, and a diol. The other polymer is diol. Diol means we have OH group on both sides of carbon atom. So this is carbon chain, and the structure is known as diol, right? So I hope now everyone can draw the structure of terylene. You know the monomers, and you can draw the structure of terylene. How many repeating units they'll ask you, you can draw them, right? So just pause the video and draw the structure by yourself, and then check your structure. So if I draw the structure of terylene, let's say this is a dioic acid, okay, dioic acid, and then we'll draw diol, right? Again, a dioic acid, I'm going to draw two repeats. So for 2 repeats, I have to draw two dioic acids and 2 diols, and then another diol, right? Okay. Now, what would be lost in this case? So from the dioic acid, OH group would be lost. From the alcohol, H would be lost. One water molecule. Again, H and OH, H and OH, H and OH. So how many water molecules are lost here? Again, 4 water molecules are lost because we have drawn 4 monomers. So the number of monomers drawn would be equal to the number of water molecules lost. And now let's just draw the structure of pterylene. It would be C double bond O, carbon chain C double bond O, and then we have a diol. We are left with oxygen. This OH, the C double bond O would make bond with the oxygen. So O, carbon chain O, and then again this oxygen would make a bond with the carbon of C double bond O. So C double bond O, carbon chain C double bond O. Again this carbon would make a bond with the oxygen of diol. So O box O. So this is the structure of the pterylene, or you can call it polyester, because if you look at the structure closely, the linkage which we have got here is this. This is the linkage. The C double bond O from acid. The C double bond O from acid linked with this oxygen from alcohol. So this is known as ester link. This is called ester link. So in nylon we have amide link, in pterylene we have ester link. So how many ester links we have here? Again an ester link, and this is again an ester link, and this is the residue of ester link, and the structure is continued on both sides. So that's why we call it polyester. Okay, so next, these are few uses of nylon and pterylene, the condensation polymers that we have discussed. So nylon, it is used to make strong ropes, because we have already discussed that nylon is strong but light. So this is used to make ropes, used to make fishing nets, nylon tents, parachutes and raincoats, right? So these are few uses of nylon. And pterylene is used to make fibers which are woven into cloth, right? So the fabric which is made from pterylene is softer than cloth made from nylon. Okay, so this is used for wearing purpose. We make shirts and bed sheets from pterylene. All right, so these are few uses of nylon and pterylene, the synthetic polymers. And next, this is very important. We're going to compare addition polymers and condensation polymers. Although still we have to discuss the natural condensation polymers, but let's just discuss this comparison between the addition polymers and the condensation polymers. So the monomer used in addition polymers, we already have discussed that usually many molecules of a single monomer, for example, polyethene from ethene, polypropene made up of propene molecules. So the monomer is unsaturated, usually contain a carbon-carbon double bond. But in condensation polymerization, the molecules of 2 monomers usually used, and that's why we call them copolymers, right? And the monomers contain reactive functional groups at ends of molecule. For example, a dioic acid reacting with a diamine. So I hope you get this point. And then the reaction which occurs in addition polymers. In addition polymers, the reaction is an addition reaction. And how addition reactions occur? Monomers join together by opening the carbon-carbon double bond. The carbon-carbon double bond, it breaks into carbon-carbon single bonds, and monomers make covalent bonds with each other. In condensation polymerization, condensation reaction occurs with loss of a small molecule, and usually that small molecule is water. And each time a monomer joins the chain, right? And then the last one, this is very important, nature of the product. In addition polymers, we only get a single product, and that is the polymer. For example, we get polyethene from ethene. So they are non-biodegradable. We have discussed in the past paper section of addition polymers that they are non-biodegradable and they are resistant to acids. They do not react with acids or alkalis. But the nature of the condensation polymers is polymerization is that we get two products. One is the polymer plus the small molecule, and most of the time that small molecule is water. Plus it is biodegradable. And how they are biodegradable, that we will discuss in the end of this topic. They can be hydrolyzed by acids, right? So this is a comparison between the addition polymers and the condensation polymers. And next we are going to discuss the natural condensation polymers. Natural condensation polymers. So first of all, we're going to discuss the protein, the most important natural condensation polymer. Now, protein is basically something what cells are made up of, right? This is basically protein is cells are made up of protein, right? And all the tissues and organs of our body are made up of proteins. Plus, we can say the enzymes which are responsible for controlling the living organisms chemical reactions, whatever the chemical reactions are happening in a living body, enzymes are controlling those reactions. So enzymes are also made up of proteins. So proteins are basically very important molecules, and protein is a natural condensation polymer which is made up of amino acids. So the monomer of proteins are monomers of protein are amino acids. And one thing you have to remember is that protein is also a polyamide. We have already discussed one of the polyamide, that was synthetic condensation polymer, nylon. And now the protein is also a polyamide. It is also a polyamide. So first of all, let's just discuss the structure of amino acids. So now amino acids, they are monomers of proteins. And what are amino acids? Organic compounds which contain both COOH group, both acidic group and the amine group. So amino acids are organic molecules which contain both carboxylic acid, COOH group, and NH2 group. So that's why we are calling them amino acids, because they contain both acidic and amine group. This acidic and amine group. So there are 20 essential amino acids. We are not going to draw the actual structures of those amino acids. We just draw a simple structure which represent amino acids in the chemical reactions, right? So an amino acid can be represented in this way. A carbon chain which is represented by a box, an acidic group on one side, and amine group on the other side. So this is a general representation of amino acid, right? So if we have a large number of these amino acids, let's just draw the structure of protein. Let's suppose if I have, this is COOH and NH2 group on one side, and let's say we have another amino acid, C double bond O, OH and NH2 group on this side, and let's just draw another one. So we have 3 amino acids, 3 monomers. So that means 3 water molecules would be lost. All right, 3 water molecules. So OH from the acidic side and H from the amine, then again OH from the acid, H from the amine, OH from the acid, and H from the amine. So how many monomers are lost here? 3 water molecules are formed, and now we are left with NH, carbon chain, C double bond O, and this carbon would be connected to this nitrogen. So again we get an amide link. That's why we are calling it a polyamide, right? So C double bond O, then this is connected to the nitrogens NH and C double bond O, and this structure goes on and on. So this is a simple structure of protein, in which again we have this amide link, These are amide links, and that's why we call them polyamide. So nylon is synthetic polyamide and protein is a natural polyamide. All right, so I hope you get the idea how to draw the structure of proteins. All right, so the next natural condensation polymer that we are going to discuss is carbohydrates. So the carbohydrates, they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, right? And they are an important source of energy in our bodies, right? In all living organisms, they are an important source of energy in all living organisms. Right. So, for example, starch is a carbohydrate which is found in plants, and these carbohydrates, these complex carbohydrates, they are made from glucose. Glucose is the monomer for the complex carbohydrates like starch or glycogen or cellulose. So the examples of complex carbohydrates are starch, glycogen, or cellulose. You don't have to remember these names, right? Just simply call them complex carbohydrates. These are the polymers. These are complex carbohydrates and they are made from glucose. The simplest carbohydrate is glucose. And while drawing the structure of the condensation polymers, we can just simply draw the structure of glucose, the monomer of complex carbohydrate, as a diol. So glucose is a diol. Although it is much complex than that, but for now we can just simply draw it like a diol. And in your syllabus, it would only be represented as a diol, right? So in condensation polymerization, we can draw a glucose as a diol. So let's say this is the structure of a diol. That means an organic compounds which contain two OH groups. So let's just draw the structure of a complex carbohydrate. So let's say this is one diol, another diol. Let's just draw 3 glucose units. All right, so now the water molecules would be lost. So OH from one side, H from the other side, OH from the one side and H, and then OH and H. So 3 water molecules are lost. 3 water molecules are lost, and we are left with O carbon chain, and then this carbon would be connected to this oxygen, so O, and then carbon chain, and then O and carbon chain. So this chain goes on and on. So this is the structure of the complex carbohydrate, and in this example, if we draw the, or if we want to find out the repeating unit, so this is repeating unit, and the linkage here is known as oxy linkage, right? This is known as oxy linkage. So this is the structure of complex carbohydrates. All right, so another natural organic molecule which we have to discuss here is fats. Now fats are not polymers, but they contain the same linkages as we have found in the terylene or polyesters. That means they contain the ester linkages as well, right? So they are not made by polymerization. Fats are not polymers, but they are the compounds or organic compounds which contain same linkage as terylene, right? So fats are basically made from alcohol and an acid, because they also contain the ester linkages. In terylene we have ester linkages, so that means fats also contains ester linkage. So they are large molecules which contain ester linkages. So that means fats are made up of an alcohol and acid. So the alcohol which is used to make fats, they are known as glycerol, right? The alcohols which are used to make fats are glycerol, and glycerol is an alcohol with 3 carbon atoms, and each carbon atom has an OH group attached to it. So let's suppose this is the structure of a glycerol. CH2, CH, CH2, and it contains OH 1, 2, and 3. Right? You don't have to memorize this structure. Just remember this thing, that it contains 3 OH groups on adjacent carbon atoms. So this is a glycerol is a triol, means it contains 3 OH groups, right? And this triol, it would make ester links with long chain carboxylic acids. As the triol contain 3 alcohol groups, 1, 2, 3. That means it can make 3 ester linkages. So we need 3 acidic molecules. So let's suppose we have this C double bond O OH1, C double bond O OH2, and C double bond O OH, 3 acidic groups, and doesn't matter how many carbon atoms we have in the chain, we just have to have 3 acidic groups, right? So 3 ester links would be formed between the alcohol and the carboxylic acid. So H from this side and OH from this side would be lost, OH lost and H lost, OH from the acid and H from the alcohol would be lost. So 3 water molecules would be lost. 3 water molecules would be lost in making the structure of one fat molecule. So the structure which we get here is CH2, CH, CH2, and 3 ester linkages, O, C double bond O, O, C double bond O, and O, C double bond O. So, and this is the carbon chain which is connected to the acidic group. So this is the structure of a fat molecule, right? So they contain the same linkages. You can see here that it contains the ester links. So that means pterylene and fats contain the same linkages. So these were the 3 organic molecules which we have to discuss. And now in the last part of this chapter, we have to discuss the hydrolysis of a condensation polymer, because we have already discussed this thing that condensation polymers are biodegradable, right? They are biodegradable. So they can be decomposed by hydrolysis. They can be decomposed by hydrolysis either in acidic or basic medium. In acidic or basic medium. Normally we hydrolyze them in acidic or acidic medium. So let's just say if we have a condensation polymer, let's suppose if we have this condensation polymer, C double bond O, C double bond O, and let's say we have polyamide, right? So this is one repeat of a polyamide, and you know this thing that this polyamide is formed by the loss of water molecule. So if we add the water molecule again into this structure, right? So this would be the hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is breaking a molecule by adding water into it or by reacting it with water. So if I react this with water molecule, H2O, in acidic medium, right? Water itself cannot break the condensation polymers. So it would work in acidic medium. So let's suppose, now there is no need to know the mechanism of this reaction. You just have to memorize this reaction, that in acidic medium, the bond or the linkage which was formed between the acid and the amine group, that linkage would break. So this was the linkage, it would break, and both the acid and the amine group would regain what they have lost in the making of this polymer. So this nitrogen, it would regain its hydrogen, and this carbon, it would regain its OH. So this is called hydrolysis. So what happens here is that the molecule, this linkage will break. We can just simply show that this linkage would break, and what we are left with now is C double bond O, and it regains its OH molecule, right? So from water. So because we have two monomers, in one repeat we have two monomers when we need two water molecules. So on both sides of C double bond O, we get an OH molecule. So we regain our carboxylic acid, and the amine group, the NH group, would regain its hydrogen. So if when bond breaks, this is NH, NH, and it regains its hydrogen. So this is the hydrogen and hydrogen. So this is the hydrolysis in acidic medium. And in basic medium, let's suppose if we are doing the hydrolysis in basic medium, then we would have OH groups present in the reaction mixture. So let's say in basic medium, instead of H plus ions, we would have OH minus. So now we are doing the hydrolysis in basic medium. So in basic medium, the only difference would be the structure which we get from the acidic part. In basic medium, so the only difference in basic medium is that we would not get the acidic group. Instead of the acidic group, because now we are doing the hydrolysis in basic medium. So first the same thing happens, the linkage would break, we get a dioic acid, and a diamine, but because base is present in the solution, so this acid will react with the base and it would lose its H plus. So it would lose the hydrogen. So instead of acid, we get carboxylate ion. The acid molecules would lose its proton, H plus, and we are left with the negative ions. So in basic medium, so the products of the acidic hydrolysis, let me just write it down here. So the products of acidic hydrolysis, are carboxylic acid and the other molecule. In case of polyamides, we get amines, and in case of polyesters, we get alcohol, diol, right? So it depends, either you are hydrolyzing a polyamide or a polyester, right? In both cases, we get carboxylic acid and amine in case of polyamides and alcohol in case of polyesters. And if we are doing the hydrolysis in basic medium, so products of basic hydrolysis. So the products of basic hydrolysis would be, we get same amine or alcohol, depending on whether we are hydrolyzing a polyamide or a polyester. And instead of carboxylic acid, we get salt of that carboxylic acid, right? So whatever the carboxylic acid is, the H plus would be lost, and instead we get the negative ions. So this is the hydrolysis in acidic and in basic medium.